Before we do anything at Platinum Real Estate, whether it's a webinar, a workshop, boot camp, anything and everything, we always start the exact same way with is, which means we always start with a word of prayer. So, you guys, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just come to you today with bowed heads and humble hearts. Father God, we just thank you for all your many blessings. We thank you for your mercy, your grace, and all your goodness, Father God. We thank you for all of the wonderful things you're doing for the corporation that you named Platinum Real Estate. We just pray that Platinum Real Estate will always be the corporation that's doing things that's pleasing in your sight. This we ask in the precious name of Jesus the Christ. Amen. All right, I see we still have some folks joining. Hello. Hello, everybody. So let's jump right in here. Um, she really needs no real introduction. Whether you are watching this live, whether you're watching the recording, this young lady truly does not need a introduction. She have been working with Platinum Real Estate for over a decade now. She is the mortgage guru. She comes every single month and blesses us with a webinar. And we truly, truly appreciate her and everything that she's doing. Those of you guys that know, the first Tuesday of the month, every Tuesday at 12 noon, we have a live webinar with Miss Tamara Birch. Now, how do we do this? If you have a question, comment, you can always raise your hand. That we love you to raise your hand. That's always best. Or you can always shoot a comment in the chat as well. So you can always shoot a chat in the chat. I'm going to send out something really quick to make sure that my chat is working. But good afternoon, everybody. Feel free, whenever you want to, you can always, let's see. You can always send something through the chat as well. Now, let me give you all of Miss Tamara Birch information is right there on the screen. 770-916-1234. Call or text 770-916-1234. You can also contact her by going to her website, tamarabirch.com. That's Miss tamarabirch.com. Okay. Now, so that you guys know, we was talking a few days ago, and we was talking about different things, and we was talking about what's hot and what's not, and we was talking about investment properties and investors. And Tamara said, Luther, I have something that's hot, and I said, you know what? Let's talk about that for the month of September. And so she said, gotcha. So without any further ado, Miss Tamara Birch.
Good afternoon. How you doing, Luther?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
It's so beautiful. I was so fortunate to get to walk outside for about 2, 3 minutes before this, and it was just absolutely beautiful. So I hope everybody gets outside today, just for a few minutes. Get that sun.
Look, we're in Atlanta, so you need to go out there and get that sun, because what's going to happen in a few weeks is going to be bitter cold. It's going to
No,
be just dog cold in a few weeks.
no, no, no,
Ah, she said no. Tamara,
no.
Tamara have lived in Atlanta long enough. One thing I love about Atlanta is we do get all of the seasons, so that's cool. We get all the
It
seasons.
is.
I
But we're
love that.
short on the winter season. Let's keep it
That's right.
short.
That's
Super
right.
tiny. Super
I agree
tiny.
with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. I love the winter, but I'm like you. Let's keep it short. But for me, coming from the north, just Christmas and Thanksgiving, it just have to be chilly. It just have to be cold for me for Christmas. After that, January 1, we can go ahead and get on back to warm again.
Go ahead. Yeah. Let's go back into the 70s or 80s and call it a day. We're all done with winter.
Yeah,
We're done.
just give me winter for like 1 week Christmas and then I'm good.
Well, you know what? I was super excited about our conversation and everybody on here is we were talking about what do we do? What do we talk about? And, I went back and looked. It's been a long time since we talked about investors. And that's crazy since investors can be a huge part of your business. Just
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Isn't it a huge part for your business,
Oh,
Luther?
yes, 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 yes. Investors is where it's at. And I'm going to talk about that more a little bit in a minute. But yes, investors, 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 definitely the way to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, why do we want to work with investors? There's so many reasons, repeat business, right? That's probably number one for me is that you're talking to an investor and they're buying several a year or several every couple of years versus just buying one home every 5 years. I mean, I have to believe you're working with investors and they repeatedly buy, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. And I love that about them.
And so guys, working with investors is big. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, where to look for investors, right? We're going to spend a little time on that. Maybe spend some time on cash versus a loan. Buying an LLC, where are we going to find these people that want to buy in an LLC? And so let's just kind of get started. We're going to go straight to the next one here and talk about, a little bit. Most investors, they want to buy in that LLC, right? They want to buy uh, using land trusts or things of that nature. They typically are not buying in their own name unless it's one of their first or second ones. Then sometimes they do to utilize a Fannie Freddie product. But most investors want to use an LLC, and that is absolutely acceptable. You can use an LLC to buy investment property. Some may want to pay cash. And Luther and I were just talking, it was last week, as a matter of fact, I think, Luther, we were talking about the pros and cons of cash versus a loan. And believe it or not, what came out of my mouth was, yeah, let them pay cash, let them get that property up front. But that doesn't mean that we can't give a loan, which we're going to talk about the DSCR loan here in a minute. We could give a loan to give them back money later for them to go buy another property. So there's a couple of different ways that we could do that, but they become a better buyer if they happen to have the cash. Is that correct, Luther? Like you get a better deal on that contract, right?
And that's possible. I, I like to say every deal is different. I like to say every situation is different. So in general, yes, but I've been doing this for so long, you can get some sweet deals with the mortgage too. Here's the most important thing, and let me say this. And I have a totally new training dealing with just investors, but here's how you get the best deal when a investor is buying a property. Not necessarily cash or financing. Here's the deal, and everybody take down this note is having the person that's selling the property having a situation. So, divorce sale, pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, those type of ways as investors, we love to get properties when there's a situation. I just had a situation where a husband and wife was just tired of owning the property. It was draining their cash. They said, this just doesn't make sense anymore. I want to sell it. And they sold it and did not receive any equity that they had earned on the property. They just wanted to let the property go. And so I had one of my investors, and my investors bought it. Single family home in Union City, great deal. Now, that deal could have been financing, it could have been cash. It really didn't matter when we're dealing with investment property. It's buying properties due to circumstance. If you are watching this, buying properties due to circumstance, that's the best way to make it happen. Okay. Now, Tamara's going to talk about some loan options, and here's where that power hits us. We are pre-qualified. We have the money. DSCR. Now the key is finding the right property. Real estate agents, everybody under the sound of my voice. Here's what you want. You want to, and I coach you through this, you want to be able to find the property and buy and find the situation. So you get the investor, you send the investor over to Tamara. The person is qualified for, let's say, DSCR. She have a lot of different loans, but we're talking about DSCR. The person is qualified for that. Now we put that investor and we find the right property, and a good part about finding the right property is finding sellers that have a circumstance. Okay? So, yes,
That,
yes,
that's so true. That circumstance leads to you showing what you're able to do with that investor. And I know Luther works with a lot of investors because investors not only are going to give you those deals, investors refer other investors. So you can build up one heck of a potential pipeline of individuals. A lot of times are faster closings, a lot more eat business. Maybe they get a little creative, and I'm going to check with Lucer on this one. Besides being more time efficient and closing faster, your credibility starts rising faster as you find these little niches, right? They're taking your call, they're wanting to work with you, they're telling other people. But Luther, can't you make more commission on some of these? Is that a possibility?
that's a possibility, but let me tell you, and that's a possibility, but let me tell you, AA judges, here is the sweet spot with investors. Let me give you an example. I back in the day, I met a dentist, helped him with some investor property. Now, what I love about investors is that investor might buy three properties, six properties, 12 properties for the year. So literally one or two investors can really give you $1 million worth of closings in a year's time. Because the single family house purchased one house, they're not going to buy another house for what, 7, 10, 15 years? Sometimes never buy another one. But with investors, you find the right property, they make money, and we're going to talk about Burr in a minute. They make money, and so since they make money, they then buy more. They then buy more properties. So one investor can allow you to have multiple closings in 1 year. One benefit. Second benefit, one investor, like I said, that dentist knew other dentists, and so I was now helping other dentists because that dentist knew dentists. I have had professional basketball players. They got a lot of cash, right? You help one professional basketball player. Now he tells somebody who tells somebody. Most investors with money know and have friends with money. So now you do a good job with one that can now duplicate, and now you can have 5 clients for the year, and those 5 clients end up giving you 20 closings, but you only have 5 clients. Rather than with residential, you have to have 20 buyers for 20 closings. Investor, you could have 3, 4, 5 investors that gives you that same 20 closings. Now, I will tell you this so that we're clear. Residential homeowners trying to buy a house, they typically go with the first agent that calls them. They don't do a lot of due diligence, and they go with the first one. Investors can be a little different. Investors might shop around for different AA agents. So you have to know what you're doing, and I have to make sure that I coach you so we maximize the opportunity. But once you have them, ooh, you got them.
It's true. I think you definitely hit on it. You know, investors are looking. for people who know what they're doing, know where they're going. They want to know that you could break down numbers for them. They want to know that you found them the deal that's going to work for them. And they might be looking at a cash flow. They might be looking at appreciation in the future. They're targeting putting money away. So you need to find out what they're looking for because they're not walking in like a regular buyer going, "Oh, this is so pretty. I want this house. This is so pretty. We'll have dinner. Look at this kitchen." That's not what they're doing. They're looking at numbers. They're looking at strategies, either exit strategies, enter strategies, ROI on appreciation, ROI on whether or not I'm going to make enough monthly to cover this and pay it off in X number of years, truly understanding what they're looking for instead of you talking to them like, "Hey, you want a kitchen, you want a bedroom, oh, little Susie's going to have their bedroom." That's not how we're going to be working with these. And I know Luther has a lot of good books and things like that that you could use. Definitely be looking at that because the way you speak to them is very different than the way you would speak to a person buying one single house to live in. Thoughts on that, Luther?
No, you're 100% right. No, absolutely 100, 1000% right. And I will say this, too. Um, my coaching plan can help you. Also, agents on my executive team. Agents in my leadership program. Look, we give you investors to contact. We give you the leads. So everybody in my leadership program, and I am seeing here. Look, a lot of you guys are on the line here. I will actually give you the investors to then contact. These are actual investors that you should contact. They want to list properties, they want to buy properties, and hey, let's go for it. So yes, Tamara is 100% right.
And that's awesome because knowing that exit strategy not only tells you they're buying these properties, but they may be selling properties, turning around, taking those funds and buying more property. Typically, they like to put it back into the market and buy something else. If they are way upside on a property, they may walk away and say, "Okay, I'm getting enough out of this to buy two or three instead of owning one." So definitely be circling to Luther on that answer to that, and sharing your ideas. But knowing those things, knowing the ROA, knowing exit strategies, knowing their plan. You may come across investors that are buy and holds forever, right? That's their retirement plan. But you may be coming across investors that are going to move property around to maximize their growth. So, really understanding your investor is very crucial, very crucial. Okay,
Right,
so
so
let's start with DSCR unless you have something to say on that, Ether.
no. I'm right with you, but go ahead.
Okay, let's go to DSCR. So typically we'll get the call, or like Luther and I were talking this week, cash versus DSCR. Just because they pay cash doesn't mean that they can't then look at a product. And when I say DSCR, I don't want you to assume there's one DSCR. There is not. We have about 15 different DSCR programs.
Okay, let's
So
do this.
lots and lots of options here.
Let's do this because I got agents that have been with me for 30 years. I got agents that just got out of real estate school and they got their license yesterday. So DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. Now, Tamara says she got 13, 14, 15 different products. Tamara, explain to us, because I never want to assume here. Explain to us what is this debt? First, what's debt service? We got to understand that. Then, what is the debt service coverage ratio so we understand what the DSCR stands for? Once we get that, then we can jump into this thing.
Absolutely fantastic answer. So most people who are looking for investment are gonna, think they might use a Fannie Freddie, they might use a hard money, they might use a DSCR. So DSCR is a debt service coverage ratio. Debt service coverage ratio. What are we looking at? What does that mean? Well, that means that the debt that they're acquiring, is the rent going to cover the payment? Is the rent going to be high enough? And we're going to talk about different ways that we do that. The rent going to be high enough to cover that payment? Why is that important? Why would that be very important? That's super important because the investor, us or whoever, wants to know that that investor buying that property can make the payment without using any of their funds and use just the renter's money coming in to make that payment. That makes that a very strong rental deal. Very strong rental deal. If the payment is more than what the rent is, of course, it makes it less strong. It's just not as strong a deal. Now, there are circumstances, and we're going to cover some of those circumstances because if you're working investors, you need to know those circumstances. We will still do a loan, DSCR, with the payment being higher than what we project rent to be. And some of those circumstances may be an Airbnb. They're buying it because of appreciation of value. Dentists love appreciation of value, have no problem paying a little bit of the difference in order to get that property and let it appreciate over time. And their CPAs tell them to do it. So DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, is that debt going to be covered by that rent that they're going to receive on the property?
Now, you guys, this is why this is sweet. Tamara, that's a great explanation. Okay. Now, let me piggyback off of this. So, Tamara, you're telling me that debt service means mortgage, right? So
Yeah.
debt service is just a fancy name for the mortgage. So what Tamara is basically saying is the rent off the property needs to cover the debt service, need to cover the mortgage. So here's why we love this program and we love Tamara for this program because now the qualifications, the big qualifying factor is the property, not me. So you guys have been there, and you guys, if you've been in this business any amount of time, you have called Tamara and you have said, "My buyer wants to qualify," and Tamara says, "I'm sorry, your buyer doesn't qualify because they don't have a job, or your buyer don't qualify because they don't have a credit score." Tamara, talk to me. Because now we're saying the driving factor, instead of looking at the buyer, we're now looking at the property. And what's the most important thing is that the property have the financials. Talk to me, Tamara. Is that true?
B- Boy, Luther just hit it. If he was playing darts, he just got a bullseye. He just won. Everybody else sit down, game over. Luther won. So what we're looking at is not, and we have investors that have, 20, 30, 50 houses. It's irrelevant how many houses you have. It's irrelevant how many mortgages you have. That is not what this loan is based on. You're self-employed, you're writing everything off. We do not ask for tax returns in order to do this loan. What we want to know again is, will the rent cover the mortgage payment? That's what we're wanting to know, right? So that means no tax returns, no W-2s, no pay stubs. What are we looking for? We're looking that you have the money, you got the assets, right? I'm looking at those bank statements, those stock portfolios. Where is the money to buy the home? Not under your bed, not in your closet. Where is the cash that I could verify in order to close on this? Do you have a halfway decent credit score? And we'll cover credit scores. Do you have a halfway decent credit score? You could be a first time investor and buy using this strategy. What you cannot do is buy it and live in it. We're talking about buying it and renting, buying and renting. So we're looking to see what it's going to rent for. Is the property going to appraise? Do we have the money to buy the home? And we do not care what your debt ratio is. Says there's no tax returns, no pay stubs, no W-2s, nothing. Now you can begin to see why investors love this loan because they can close in their LLC and prove no income whatsoever to buy this home. None, or duplex, triplex, quad, whatever the case may be. Did that answer your question, Luther?
Oh, yeah. And here's the deal. I have a lot of business owners making a lot of money, have saved a lot of money, but they write off everything. So their taxes look like they're losing money, but in reality, they are making money or they have money. This loan is perfect because I don't have to put up my tax returns. Tamara, loving this.
No tax return. And that is critical because the investors that are buying, a lot of them, like Luther just said, that you need to realize, yes, there's a dentist, yes, there's a surgeon, and their accountants and their financial people are telling them to buy property to diversify their portfolio. So they hear that regularly. So those are people. But at the same time, you have the person who might have two, three, four businesses, and they are looking for even more write offs, right? And so this affords them to do that while still building generational wealth through property, through real estate. And so the DSCR is perfect for them because those tax returns are not collected. We are looking at the loan to see if the property can stand on its own with the payment and what the rent is.
Absolutely perfect. Now, Tamara, let's do this. I have somebody who just raised their hand, and I want them to ask their question. You can unmute yourself. Yes, hello. How are
Hi,
you?
this is Maisha. I have with those the scenario that you just expressed or explained, do you have to have experience doing this already? Do they look for you to be experienced in the investing business, or could it be a person that's interested in doing it and they've never done any investment properties before?
That is such a fantastic question, Maisha. I knew I was going to get that question. We both knew it. Luther and I even said something about it last week on that. So, with the DSCR program, you could be buying your very first investment property. For them, it's there is no long-term investor. You have never owned one, that's perfectly fine. What I like to do is I have a much longer conversations with those investors when I'm working with them because as a new investor, you're going to want to know things. So we make sure we cover how to rent it, which I know is unusual for a loan officer to do. What rent is looking like in the area, so that if we're writing an offer, we know that it's going to pass for the rent portion. Walking through those things, what to put on a contract. As a first time investor, that's fantastic. You need to jump in. We just want to make sure when you're jumping in that we've got the income, the ROI flow for you. Because guess what? We want you to buy more to really build that wealth. We don't want you to get hit on the first one when you're going, I'm losing money. That's what we want to make sure we help you with. But yes, first time home investor purchasing DSCR is absolutely 100% acceptable.
Hey, Maisha, you are
Yes,
bringing
sir.
up an excellent point that we're making. At Platinum Real Estate, whether you're on my coaching program, here's what we do. We're going to run the numbers. At Platinum Real Estate, we offer property management services. So we know how much it's going to rent for. We know how long the property is going to be vacant. They can manage it themselves, or they can say, hey, Platinum Real Estate, will you manage it for us? And we will manage the property for them. So we run the numbers, we give them the entire plan, we give them the strategy. So whether you're a first-time investor or if you've done this many, many times, most investors don't understand property management. Maisha, we got that. Most of them don't understand 1031 tax exchange. What is 1031 tax exchange? Sell a property, buy another property, and you can avoid paying taxes. So our our services that we offer, whether you're first time or you've been doing this forever, we can help you, and we have the answers to your questions. Okay. No,
Right.
That was a great question. I love that question.
yes, another question, Maisha?
They do.
Yes, go ahead.
So typically, how much would you say a person, like if I have an investor that's interested or a new investor that's interested in doing this or interested in this type of loan, how much would you say this person needs to have on hand to basically see this deal go through?
Oh, I got
So
that
that's
answer. I got that answer. I got the answer. Here's how you deal with it, Maisha. The investor don't have to have a specific amount of money. Okay. Here's how we deal with it. So your investor contacts Maisha or any agent that's on this line, and I do this all day, every day. And that investor says, "Hey, Maisha, I want to invest in real estate." Our first question is, "Where's the money at now?" And they're going to say, for example, "It's in my savings account." What's your return on investment right now? Well, I have $300,000 in my savings account. What's your return? My return is 2%. Okay, so our goal is to find a property with a higher return on investment. Because if you take that money out of your checking account and invest in real estate, you want a higher return on investment. You with me? Okay. So that's my first question. The next thing is whether you have $10,000, $100,000, or $1 million, we have to find the property that's going to fit your circumstance. So, Maisha, it's no real quote unquote minimum. They don't have to have 100,000. They don't have to have 300,000, right? But we have to know how much money they have and where it's at and what type of return they're getting now so we can invest their money wisely. So I can't really say, well, Maisha, everybody needs to have a minimum of $100,000. Well, not necessarily. When I started, Maisha, I didn't have a lot of money. I put together partnership. I was in Maisha's shoes, real estate agent. As I helped a investor, this investor trusted me. I helped another investor. This investor trusted me. This investor got 40,000. This investor got 40,000. I have 80,000. Let's go buy a property with $80,000. My first deal, Maisha, I had 5 partners. Each partner, now this was back in the 90s, each partner gave $10,000. I ended up with $50,000 on my first deal. $10,000 don't sound like a lot of money, but since I had 5 investors, I had 50,000 back in the 90s. Your boy was good. I can now buy investment property. So it's about strategy rather than this is the maximum amount of money that you need. Does that make sense?
We're gonna have a talk, I guess off the line because I do have a person that's interested in doing that,
Yeah.
but it's a multiple people group as well. So
Look,
okay.
look. So, if I would have said, "Hey, it's $100,000," maybe somebody don't have 100,000, but you may have 3 people with 50, 3 people with 30, and I can still make it happen. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Now,
Right.
now, now, here's the question we want to ask Tamara. So we have these investors, we have a pot of money. So I got 50,000, 100,000. I don't care. I got 20,000. Okay. So we have the investors with the money. Here's the question that we want to ask Tamara. With the DSCR loan, we understand it's about the property and the rent coming off of the property. Here's the question for Tamara. What's the typical amount of down payment? Do we need to put down 30%, 25%, 20%, 10%? Because we need to ask Tamara, with the DSCR loan, what's the typical amount percentage of money that we have to put down? Help me with that one, Tamara.
So that's actually a great question. I love that question. And so there are variations, especially when you're talking about an LLC. There might be, like you're talking about here, two, three, four, five people in the LLC. One person's applying for the loan, two people applying for the loan, whatever the case may be. We're looking at their credit, but there may be, multiple people within the LLC that own it. Okay. And so, depending upon those credit scores, they may only need 20%. They may only need 15%. We have a new 15%. Or maybe they need 25%. So, we'll take a look at the overall picture. Can someone buy a home by themselves as an investor using DSCR with $2,000? No, that's not who you're looking for. But could you, as an agent, put together a group like Luther's talking about? Sure, absolutely. That's something that can be done. But we want to typically see the average is about 20% down. But one of the new things to the DSCRs that we have, because we have about 15 of them, four of them are now allowing gift funds. Okay. And so what we're seeing is mom and dad trying to help the kids start their portfolio because they've got some rental property. And so mom and dad stepping up and giving them 10% for their gift of a down payment on an investment property. And that's just crazy because we haven't seen that. Luther and I haven't seen that in years and years and years. And so you got a few variations in there.
So, Maisha, let's talk. All right, Maisha. So let's kind of reverse engineer this. Tamara said there's some programs out there, 15%, but they're different. But she said on average 20. And there's also maybe some ones out, some programs out there for 25%. Let's just use 20 as a sweet spot. Yeah, we could possibly get 15, might have to go 25, but let's use 20 as a sweet spot. So, Maisha, what we have to do is when our investor comes and we talk to our investor, whether it's one, whether it's seven, we want to just kind of guesstimate or estimate. We're looking at about 20% down. So if we're looking at a single family home averaging 300 grand, 20% of 300,000, right? $600,000 duplex, quadruplex. We are guesstimating about 20% down. Yes, we might could go to 15. Yes, it maybe it's 25, but 20% is the sweet spot. So now, Maisha, when we get that investor, and that investor says $10,000, $50,000, $500,000, we're thinking we're going to need about 20% down to do a DSCR loan. Is this making sense to everybody? So now we understand, okay, if I have this amount of money and I shoot it over to Tamara, and Tamara says I need for the particular a program 15%, 25%, 20%, whatever, I understand with this amount of money down, I can probably afford this amount of money. Making sense? Yes, Maisha?
Yes, yes,
Right? So
makes
that's how
sense.
we look at how much capital we need to make the deal happen. So we run it through Tamara. She says 15%, 20%, 25%, whatever program she got going, whatever my situation is, then I know how much capital that I have to come up with to make this thing happen. Okay?
Gotcha.
Excellent question. Other questions? Raise hands. I want more questions. Hands, hands, hands.
And the questions are good because I guarantee you everybody has these questions. And this is a two-part series. So we hope you get, a lot out of this first part series because we're going to be covering investors fix and flip and hard money next time. But with this, kind of keeping in mind and making sure we understand this is not no you cannot occupy this property. It's investor occupied, right? That means that is only for investors to put renters in there. Here's a question nobody has asked, but we're going to cover. Okay. How do we determine whether the coverage is there for the rent, right? What is determined? How is that done? Who makes that determination? Well, there's a two-part to this. Sometimes you may be coming back to me to pull the cash out and you already have a renter in there. We already have a rental agreement. So we're going to take a look at that rental agreement. This may be a property that you found, the owners are selling, they're going to move out. There is no tenant, there is no rental agreement there, right? So, how are we determining we're going to be able to close on this loan? An appraiser will do a 1007, and that is what is happening with rent in the immediate area, what those properties are renting for. They will pull up an average of those rentals, and then we know exactly the appraisal comes back with not only the value, the appraisal comes back with this is the estimated rent for the area based on what this home looks like today. And so next time we're going to cover 1007s that may be coming a little low and fix and flip and hard money. So we'll talk about that too. But they want to know that it's going to rent for that. So the appraisal with the 1007 is going to give us that amount, and that's what we're going to use to determine we have enough. Now, that doesn't mean the deal is killed if it comes in a little lower. As you recall, in the beginning part of this, we said we can even go below the 1 ratio. Those are things that we go back and we discuss. Or maybe it came in a lot higher and now we can give them a better deal. That also doesn't mean set in stone that's what the property rents for, right? Luther's going to tell you he may see a higher rent, he might see a lower rent. That all this is determining for the loan, will it rent high enough for us to do the loan?
Now, let me ask you this because this here's a great question that just came up. And hey, you guys keep shooting me questions. Here's a question, Tamara. So I get it. I have a client, doctor, lawyer, whatever. They have the 20% down to purchase the property. We have not talked about reserves yet. Can that buyer have just the 20% or is reserves? Now let's talk about explain to us what exactly is reserves and how much reserves is required, if any.
That is a fantastic question. How do reserves come in? So, how much money do they need to have as assets? Remember, we said the property, assets, credit score, right? That's really the main determination. Assets, property, credit score, what is it going to rent for? So, assets are critical when using DSCR. Not only do you need to have enough for the down payment, okay, and your closing costs, but DSCR, unlike other programs, will allow for the sellers to pay up to 6% in closing costs. That's huge, and we'll cover that again. But you need to have reserves. Reserves are you have X number of properties that you have mortgages on, plus the one you're buying. And there are so many variations, so many variations. But the norm I typically see is anywhere between 2 to 4 months of reserves on the house you're buying, or the property, excuse me, as well as 2 months reserves on each one that you own. And reserves would be what is that payment? So if they don't have a payment, what are the taxes and insurance monthly? So why do we care? Why do we care that you have these reserves? because you might be going in, you might be painting it, might be putting in floors, and it may take you a month or two to rent it. So, what are we looking at? We're wanting to make sure if you have to step in at any time and make that payment, you have the funds to be able to do so, that it would not be a detriment to you, because we don't want to see somebody buy it. Their payment's $3,000. Their rent is $3,000. They had no reserves. The person moved out. They didn't know they moved out, and now they got to make this $3,000 payment, but they don't have any money, right? That's not investor what you want in an investor. We want to know, and the investor wants to know they've got enough funds if they need to step in. So reserves are, they vary upon program, but at a minimum, we're looking at least 2 months, as the program wants to know you have some money. Did that answer that question, Luther?
Yes, absolutely. Now, here's another important part to this question. When we're talking about the DSCR, I'm a real estate agent. I have a client, right? The application process, the closing process, is this going to take longer to close? Or can I close this quicker because this DSCR? Let's talk about the loan process. From application to close, about how long does it take? Can we get it done? Oh, will it take longer to get it done? Is it quicker to get it done? Talk application time for me.
Okay, so that's a great question, because investors' approvals are very different in the sense of we're not approving you based on your debt ratio of what you could afford to buy. We're approving you based on the amount of assets that you have. Here's how much total property you could buy. So somebody has 300,000, we're doing a calculation for that and saying you could buy X amount of property. Now, they might not be going out and buying a 600. They might be buying a 400 and then another 200, or they might be buying a 300 and then another 300. So keep that in mind when we get the approval. We're telling you that's their total. That is not the amount you go and buy at one time. Maybe they're looking for multiple properties with that. So the process is actually very simple. They apply, they provide their assets. We do a soft pull to see what that credit score is looking like, and then these loans close relatively quickly. Why? Because we already have the assets in place. We're looking for title and appraisal, right? That appraisal's coming in, we're trying to close. And so a lot of times these close in 2, 3 weeks. They start buying unusual properties. I've got one closing that is a condo, non-warrantable. Yeah. You start buying some unusual properties, I'm going to go to you. Hey, let's do a closing on this one about 25 days, 20 days, 30 days. Depends on what the situation is. But overall, they move very fast and super easy, because once that appraisal comes in, you're going into underwriting and collecting any final documentation and getting it done.
I'm loving it, loving it, loving it, loving it, loving it. So that's another benefit. Couple of weeks, over 30, 45 days, I will take that all day for that DSCR. Now, question. What about this Airbnb? Airbnb, especially in certain areas, and we got agents on here in Florida and everything, even certain areas in Atlanta. This Airbnb stuff is hot. Can I do it for an Airbnb?
You sure can. Like I said, the one closing tomorrow is a non-warrantable condo in Florida, right? That borrower is not putting, that investor is not putting somebody in there for 12 months. That investor is buying it and Airbnb, verboing it, right? All of that kind of thing. And we got non-warrantable all up and down the coast there in Florida. So is something that we are able to do with the DSCR program. It's more flexible with those programs, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes the rent comes back high enough where we don't even have to address Airbnb and Verbo because of the property being on the water. But yes, Airbnb and Verbo, those are the ones where it's going to rent for more than what the appraiser is saying it's going to rent for. And so that's why we have the lower ratios of the rent for those those individuals in that exact scenario. And by the way, guys, we always knew this would be a two-parter for you. So don't be surprised. It's going to be a two-parter because we knew this a lot of information, lots of questions. Working with investors is a big deal, and we haven't covered this in almost a year. So I want to make sure because there are a lot of changes that have come about in the last year.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I have about 60 seconds, but I got to ask this one here. It's important. And if you have a question, raise your hand. If you have a question, raise your hand. I will take it. But here's the deal, Tamara. Prepayment penalty. This is a question that I have, and I was like, man, I just have to get this in before we end. So, as investors, right? Um, is prepayment penalty. How are we working with the prepayment penalty situation? Is there a prepayment penalty? If so, how much? How long? Let's talk prepayment penalty.
Well, and I love this question, and it was something we were going to talk about. So I know we're circling back again next month on this part two of this. But what is great about the prepayment penalty, investors love to decide on their own if they want one or don't want one, right? Why would an investor want one? Better interest rate. They're bringing it down. An investor who says, again, knowing your investor, what are they doing? What is their exit strategy? Saying to an investor, hey, how long will we keep in this? Oh, this one's permanent. Okay, they may want a prepayment penalty to bring that interest rate way down. We give them 5 different scenarios and let them pick. Maybe they're saying, Tamara, I'm only going to keep this, which we're not talking about today, but we're going to talk about it later. I'm gonna fix this up. I'm gonna burr this baby out. So you need to come back next time for the burr. I'm gonna burr this baby out and I'm gonna cash out and take all my money back. Okay. And so I don't want a prepayment penalty. I agree with them. Don't do one. 100% don't do one. So what's great about the prepayment penalty on these programs is it allows the flexibility for your investor to make that deal work for them. They're deciding the ROI is there, and they can use prepayment penalties to make it even higher ROIs on their property. And without someone telling them they have to do it, they're getting, hey, here's scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're picking the scenario that's best for you based on the return you're looking to get. I hope that answered that question.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. As I have one more question, I would love him to ask it live because I don't want to mess it up on him. He put it here in the chat. Great question, but I don't want to make sure that. Can you unmute yourself and ask this one live, or do you want me to take a shot at it here? Um, Jacob, can you talk and ask this one, or do I need to shoot at it? No, all right, good. Talk to me, cause you have a great question. Go, Jacob, talk to me. What are we talking about? What's your question?
Hello. Yeah. The
Yes, sir,
question is,
go.
hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Our question is, as far as the appraisal wise, I know you have to get an appraisal for the loan to get approved. And so if the property need repairs, would the appraisal be completed like subject to completion, or yeah, or will it still be as is or whatever?
That is a fantastic question. I can see why Luther wanted that question answered. So thank you, Jacob. So part two on the next class, we will be covering maybe hard money or properties that have a lot of issues that need to be fixed. What type of loan works best for that? The DSCR loan is based on that property. That is your collateral, right? And so they're not looking for properties that have holes in the wall, that the kitchen's destroyed, that the bathroom is missing. That's not what this loan is for. So this is such a fantastic question. Now, could the colors be pink, orange, green, blue, yellow, and nobody wants to live there? It looks like craziness going on in there, and the kitchen is there, but it's ugly and it's 1922. Yes, that's fine for DSCR. What they're looking for, could be rented the way it is. But we all know investors, I'll go in and I'll, put it in new flooring. I'll put in, I'll paint it. I'll put updated kitchen. Why am I doing that? It's increasing my value and I'm going to get more rent. But I could still do it with the DSCR because I'm self-funding it. But next time we're going to be talking about some hard money options if that property is in disrepair. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it's got a color thing and an old kitchen and an old bathroom. You got the pink tile going on in the bathroom. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about holes in the wall. The roof has a hole in it. You walk inside and you're thankful you wore your steel-toed boots and you've got your flashlight because nothing else is working. That's going to be more of a hard money. I hope that answered that question.
Yes, it did. Basically, so what you're saying is this program is geared toward properties that is currently rented already or can be rented basically in their as-is condition. So that did answer my question.
Yeah, as is, but that doesn't mean you have to leave it that way. Like I'll use a DSCR for a burr for myself, right? Because I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna take that pink tile out and I'm gonna change the bathroom. But there was nothing in the home that was preventing me from getting the loan. I just want to maximize my rent, and I know if I go in and superficially make it prettier, I'm going to get better rent for that property.
And one more question for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
As far as advertising and marketing, do you have any type of suggestion or do you have any type of templates or whatever that could help, that could be used to market this particular program to investors?
That's a fantastic question. Absolutely. All of my agents that work with me have information with their picture on it because I have a system. You have to use my system for it. It isn't something that we send out, but I have a actual CRM system that I put you in, and then it lets me print everything with your picture and all your contact information on it. You're welcome right there on that phone number. Text me your information. I can send you a link to sign up, and then we have hundreds of these different flyers, different things you can put on social media, all kinds of stuff to market to these individuals. You're more than welcome to all of it, and we don't charge for any of it. So just part of us having a partnership.
That's fantastic. I'll be sending that over to you immediately.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
all right,
What a
very
great
good.
question. Wow.
All right, very good. Listen, and I am putting something in the chat. This is for everybody. Check out our Platinum Real Estate Investor Division. It's investor.platinumrealestate.com. That's investor.platinumrealestate.com. We are helping investors. We do everything from A to Z. We help investors sell the property, buy the property. We handle the property management. If you're a real estate agent and maybe you have an investor and you say, hey, this investor needs property management, you don't supply the property management, no problem at all. Send them to investor.platinumrealestate.com. Maybe you have an investor that maybe the investor don't have a lot of money. They don't have the 20%, but they're looking to put together a partnership with somebody. Investor.platinumrealestate.com. We have investors and they're looking to put together partnerships, and we actually put together partnerships for investors. So anything you need with investment property, check it out at investor.platinumrealestate.com. Again, to contact Tamara, that's tamarabirch.com or 770-916-1234. 770-916-1234. Tamara, please, in closing, tell us 3 things that we should take away from this webinar today. What are 3 important things that every agent should take away from this webinar today?
Well, first of all, thanks everybody for your time. As always, I know time is money, so I appreciate you. I'd say first thing is call me. pick up the phone, call me, because we're going to talk strategy for that investor. I'm going to talk strategy with your investor. They're not working with somebody who doesn't own rental property as well. Luther and I practice and preach it as well. So that's number one. Number two, if they have assets they need to get into the market, they're building wealth for themselves, their children, their grandchildren, etc. DSCR is going to let them do that. By you adding this as a niche for yourself, you are going to build your business exponentially. The more you know, the more you're going to grow with this, and the more you're going to attract investors. If you need anything, you want marketing material, you've got my number right there on the screen. You're welcome to text me. I'm happy to get it set up and get you some stuff out there, as well as chat with you personally anytime. I appreciate you guys. I hope that all of you stay safe, enjoy your day, stay blessed, and hopefully you get outside and see this beautiful weather we're having.
All right, sounds like a winner. Look, you guys. Again, check out investor.platinumrealestate.com. Look, I look forward to seeing everybody at the next Power Hour. That's happening on next Thursday at 12 noon. Look forward to talking to everybody then. Thank you, and God bless you.